So, you want to do your own little bits of video? Maybe you want to do a vlog. Maybe you're a small or one person company, want to do a few videos, or for whatever reason you want to do some videos that look pretty decent, but you have little to no actual equipment and you're not really a professional. Here are a few tips to doing home video on a budget. Let me get this out of the way first. There are lots of actual professional level guides out there. These can definitely be useful. It's where I've adapted some of my tips from. And especially if you've done video work before, if you've got some of the better equipment or you can afford and invest in some of the better equipment, definitely take a look at things like that. But after a point you realise that you are just kind of looking at their high-end techniques and trying to work how to bring them down to your budget or experience level. So I figured I'd share some of my tips on that. But if you've outgrown anything that if what I'm saying is really obvious to you, take a look. There are some really good guides out there. But if you want to do stuff with just home gear, here's some of what I use. Okay, most importantly, believe it or not, audio. I've seen corporate videos with high visual production values, but the audio is bad, and that actually puts me off trying to watch them because I can't figure out what's going on, or people mumble or go off mic or things like that. If your camera can take an external microphone, definitely go for that. That will help. That will help a lot. If you can get something close to you or whoever's talking, that can definitely help. Especially if you've got your camera set up on a tripod somewhere that's a bit further away from you and you're zoomed in. That's great for kind of making sure that you've got the scene set up that you want. But then it means that the camera's mic might be here and you're way over here. Doesn't work quite so well. The camera equipment I use doesn't. I record audio separately. First thing that I did, in my case, because I'd already done a little bit of podcasting as a hobby, I would just set up my microphone next to me, record straight into GarageBand, which I was using on the Mac, just record my audio straight onto the computer, whilst I was videoing. That is a very good way of doing it, especially, if you've got a microphone set up like that. So if you're already doing audio and just breaking out into video, that's a very good place to start. If you've not got that, but you still want something a little bit better, one place that a lot of people recommend starting is use your smartphone. If you're not already using it for your camera, use the built-in audio recorder on your phone. Because, again, you can get it closer to where you are. It still might not be, 100% perfect, but you get something that's just a little bit closer to where you are, not as much background noise, or if you need to do stuff afterwards to try to eliminate background noise, you're not also eliminating your voice because you're right next to it, that kind of thing. What I tend to use, and let's get my other bit of kit up running here, and let's record just so we can see. I use an external audio device. The one that I use is the Tascam DR40, which basically currently I just have set up on a mini tripod pretty much just in front of me, which is really quite useful. So yeah, those are a couple of options. Use something external. You can get, again, various different levels of stuff from just under £100 to a couple of £100. Again, it depends very much on how much you're into audio. You know, I had a pre-existing interest in doing audio stuff, and you know, I was wanting to get bits of better gear as I went along. So yeah, for me it made sense. But like I said, you know, I already had microphones, and you know, if you've got microphones, record into your laptop or your computer or whatever it is, that's a good way of doing it. And again, you don't need to use an external audio interface unless you got one of those high geeky interests in audio equipment like me. You can get some pretty good USB audio microphones, and again, you know, just look online, find the ones that people recommend. Another thing that I would recommend on that myself, when you're trying to get any bits of gear, especially audio gear, if you listen to a lot of podcasts, or you know, you find that there's a lot of YouTube channels that got decent audio, try to find out what gear they use, because you know, if they're getting good results out of it, you know that good results can be got out of that kit. It's definitely worth looking into. If you are recording your audio separately, it does take a little bit of effort to line up, but it's worth the time. Because, you know, here's me just from the camera audio. I mean, it's not bad. I hope I'm not monitoring it at the moment. It'll do. But, you know, if I put the external audio feed back in, we get just, you know, a better quality of sound. It's the way it is. And it can help. And, you know, if you're recording somewhere noisy, again, you know, the better quality equipment will help with stuff like that. And again, getting the microphone close to where you are, or closer than the camera, really can make quite the difference. Now with video, things have changed a bit since I started, even just a few years ago. Smartphone cameras these days, they're a very good beginning step. Even just in the past handful of years, they are way better than, you know, when I kind of started trying to do little bits of video, where I had a phone with a camera that wasn't great and just wouldn't have done what I wanted to do. But my current phone, if I didn't already have equipment that was more suited to video, I'd probably be using that. The only thing that you can sometimes find is that they can be a bit of a bugger to get onto a tripod. But even then, I think there are some tripods out there that are specifically designed, you know, for if you're using stuff with your phone. There are ways of, you know, propping it up and stabilising it. And if that's what you've got, it does a good job. Or if you're just doing kind of handheld voice to face to camera stuff, a lot of people do record stuff straight onto a phone. You know, even like, you know, there's some of the you know, higher end ones that I've seen that they'll record straight to phone, either to show that it can be done, or say, you know, if the batteries are run flat on something else. So it can work. It really can. If you're also into photography, a DSLR is a very, very good place to start. I mean, I did kind of try with mine. It's Canon EOS 1100D. Didn't quite do what I needed, certainly at the time. One of the main drawbacks, to be honest, I had is just that the SD card was too small and I rabbit on a lot. So I'd run out of space, but that's not too much of a problem. The stock ones you get these days are better, and, you know, just buy a bigger card. I've now got a better card for it anyway, but, you know, that can come in useful. You can also get relatively cheap camcorders, you know, for, you know, they start about 100 quid and you go up to about, you know, 200, 250, and you get a, you know, reasonable stuff. And the advantage with something like that is that the again, if I can focus in on here, you will see that the, you know, the preview window, you can flip it out to face you, so you can see where you are in the frame, and that is useful, you know, because yes, you can have a look at the camera and have a good idea of where you're going, but you might not necessarily know, how you look, what other things are in scene. If you want to pick up another prop, if I want to pick up something, I can immediately tell if it's in frame or not because I'm looking at the preview right now. Really important thing, tripod. Again, unless you're specifically going for the handheld look, go for a tripod. You can get some cheap ones for 10, 20 quid that are not great, but they keep your camera steady. They'll do. If that's all you can afford, if you just need something that you can put your camera on, point it at you, and once you get it in the right place and you don't need to move it around, leave it there, it'll do. And then, I've moved up something that's about 30, £40. You can get ones that cost more. You can get ones, you can just keep on going up. If you get better and more into it, you can get better and better tripods. But even at the kind of 30, 40, 50 mark, you're getting stuff that's, a little bit sturdier, has got, smoother movement. You can, wind it up to go higher, little things like that. And it really, really does help. Recording space. If you got a spare room or a study or a garage or something like that, fantastic, you lucky bugger. If you want to do vlog stuff, then you can just use your room background if you want, but again, if it's noisy, if it's cluttered, if you've got a small place and not a lot of storage space and it always looks a mess, it can just look busy. And again, if you're trying to do stuff for your corporate stuff, if you're doing stuff a little bit for business, you might not necessarily want, stuff like, the pictures of your kids in the background, or, your bookcase. You just want something that looks the part. So yeah, if you need to either partition off the room or smarten it up, you can start with just a bed sheet. That's what I did. If you go back and check out, I think my second and third one to where I started, I just basically pegged the bed sheet up to do a laundry rack, and had that outside, and it worked. It screened out the fact that my living room is tidy and a mess. And then I stepped up to getting an actual backdrop frame. I'll still occasionally just peg a bed sheet to it, but it's an actual proper frame. In fact, if I go out, you'll see it's it does a really, really good job, I find. Move that back. Yeah, it's going to be a bit more rough and ready this episode, just because obviously I'm occasionally going to be showing the stuff I'm using, which means that my setup's going to go screwy. But yeah, actual photography frame and backdrops, those can also come in quite useful. Now, the next thing you're probably going to look at is lighting. Proper studio lights, or a lot of people recommend using work lights, which are not overly expensive, but they do take up a lot of space. But if you've not got the money or the space for stuff like that, just standard bedside desktop lights. That's what I've got. I've got a few of those scattered around. I use a bit of tissue paper as a sort of DIY softbox. Similarly, I've got one of those daylight replacement lights to help with seasonal affective disorder, and I've got that one that just adds a little bit of bluer light just to the background. But now I find, since I've started using this for a few videos, it's like suddenly the lighting's a bit crisper, it looks a little bit better on the end product. When I can, if I've got to try to do some little bits of tweaking in software, it just looks that little bit better, and doesn't look quite so washed out. So yeah, you don't have to spend tens to hundreds of pounds on proper studio lighting. Just get a handful of £5 to £10 bedside lights. Scatter them around a bit, they will definitely help. This is where looking at some of the more professional guides can come in useful, because at least they will show you how to, how to set lighting up properly. And even if, like me, I don't necessarily follow it exactly, but I've watched a few things like that which have given me an idea of kind of, why if I put lights in some places it looks better than others. So do look up kind of photography and video lighting guides, and then just, adjust it to whatever gear that you've got. When it comes to putting it all together, software wise, if it can stick footage together, it'll do. If you've got a Mac, you've got iMovie that, pretty much comes with it. That's good for basic editing. I did use that for quite a while. I outgrew it just because I had a personal preference for wanting to work with one or two more layers, and there were one or two features that I wanted that iMovie didn't have. But if I was forced to, just stick to still using iMovie, I would still be able to come up with stuff that does what I want, because, if you can stitch your stuff together, it's fine. It'll do. The intermediate stage can be a bit fiddlier to navigate. The stuff like Adobe Premiere Elements, which I used for a while, Pinnacle Studio when I upgraded my laptop to Windows, various other ones. Each have different advantages and disadvantages. Some have a different subset of features, require different ways of working around. Some will be a bit stronger in some ways and not quite as good in others. You've really got to take a look at what each bit of software offers and what you need it to do, and try to find the one that balances that the best. Once you've outgrown those, again, you're into the higher level of software, and once you're starting using stuff like Final Cut Pro or full on Adobe Premiere, that's when again you want to be looking at those higher end guides that are useful anyway, to get an idea. Because like I said, I look at some of those and then figure out how do I do this on the cheaper software. Once you're into those bits of software though, there's so many features on there, you definitely want to be looking at proper guides to figure out what you're doing. So again, if you're listening to me kind of going, this is stuff I know already, it's like, well, yeah, you're probably on a little bit more of a budget than I've got, and you've probably got more experience than I have. Start looking out for those really, really good ones. Check out things like Ripple Training, check out things like Cinecom. That's one that I like because they've got a good little bit of a tongue-in-cheek attitude, but still show really good work. And just look around, find a tutorial set that suits you, that kind of that speaks on your level, that kind of takes things as seriously or as jokily as you like. And there's lots out there. Find them. Yeah. And the other thing is, again, if you're just doing little bits of home stuff, you don't need a fancy title sequence. Now, I've got a bit of a title sequence because I was interested in the process, and also I wanted to experiment with Apple Motion and visual effects stuff, just to get a vague idea of how that kind of stuff works. So I put something together because I wanted to, and every so often I'll tweak it because I've already got something, so I might as well tweak it and adjust it as required. But you don't need it unless you want to do it, especially if you're just doing a vlog. If you're trying to make a short film, put together footage from a family event, if you're trying to do a video to promote your business or a friend's business or whatever, then you probably do want to pay a little bit more attention. You want to do stuff with titles, and again, you'll be wanting to look at other stuff for that. But if you're just doing a home vlog, unless you like title sequences or unless you want to learn how other bits of design software work, it's not essential. Or just get little stock clips that you can get from places. You can get, some places do them cheap, some places do them free. Just look around. But you don't need expensive equipment. You don't need expensive software. You basically just need something where you can record your video, record your audio, light your room halfway decently, and stitch it all together and upload. You know, and if you can't afford all the little bits that you've got at once, get them as and when you can. Start off with, just I'm talking to a camera and the sound ain't great and the room looks a tip and the lighting's shoddy, but just get an idea of what you're doing, get comfortable in front of the camera, figure out sort of how you want to frame things, then improve your audio, then improve your background. But if like me, you've just got an interest in wanting to do a bit of video work, and the thing that's stopping you is my equipment's crap, don't let that stop you. Just make stuff. Get better as you go along. That's what I did. I've still got a way to go. But I think I'm going to enjoy getting there. And with all that said, see ya.